The key thing that she said was, I'm so glad I did it, right? And I think that's the key that you've got to think of is don't delay your life for this because life happens quickly.
How's it going, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. My name is Matt. That is Shawn, and welcome to our show, Shawn. In today's episode, we're going to be talking about giving up the 2.75 mortgage rate to buy a new house, something that everyone's been avoiding for the past 5 to 6 years. But first, before we start recording, we're talking about taxes. It is tax season. I disclosed to Shawn how much I pay in taxes, and he's like, you need a new accountant. Now, I don't think that I pay... I think I pay... a lot. I think I pay a lot.
Yeah.
I don't know what other real estate agents pay for their taxes.
Right.
So I have nothing to compare it to. Mine seem normal on paper to me, but then if another person says, "Oh, you're paying it high," now I just have to reconsider everything I'm doing in my life because maybe I am paying too much.
Yeah, and that's the thing is it's hard. A good accountant will steer you correctly and know your write-offs and all that stuff. But the other thing we were talking about is you were single, filing single, right? And I'm married, filing jointly with 2 kids, right? So we get more write-offs in those regards. So maybe I'm just off because of those deductions that I get. But at the same time, we have to be aware of what we're spending and what our write-offs are because, the 25% or, the different tax brackets are for segments of your income, not your entire income. And so if you're paying, 30% of what I think you're paying too high, right? 40% or whatever it is, right?
Well, I think my gross, I'm not going to say numbers, but like my gross income and the amount of taxes I'm paying, it's like 25%. Okay, so it's like I pay 25% of my gross income for taxes, federal and state combined.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's high. I don't know if it's low. I don't know if it's
Well,
normal.
if you think about it, you should have a lot of write-offs because you're a real estate agent, so you pay for all of that stuff that you have to do to get the properties ready. So you're paying 25% of your gross, but what's your net? You should be paying about 25% or less of your net. And it depends on your tax bracket. So in my opinion, you probably will get money back, and that's probably the situation. You probably get money back every year.
I don't think I maybe have gotten money back like once or twice.
Yeah.
There was one time when like the IRS was like, "Yo, you owe us like $22,000."
Oh my gosh, that's
and I was like, oh, I almost had a heart attack.
Man.
And then like the next year they were like, "Oh, by the way, here's $17,000."
Yeah.
I'm like, what is happening?
There's something going on there, and accountants, they have what to follow. They're good. I have a really great accountant, and I'm always like, do it right, do it by the books. I don't want to get audited, all that stuff. So,
comment down below if you think I need a new accountant. I like my accountant. I got nothing wrong with the guy, but when the IRS is sending me letters, something has gone wrong. But I fully admit that like sometimes I'm sending him stuff on like April 14th,
Yeah.
So
it happens.
I need to get better about that. All right, let's jump into the weekly county and city statistics for the greater Northern Virginia area. Shawn, we're approaching spring market. Agents will tell you, spring market's here. I think the season we're in is the spring of deception, right?
Yeah.
With the weather.
Yeah.
It was super nice out the past couple days, and now it's going to be not so nice out. But as we're looking at the weekly statistics, there's a few things that jump out to me. And if you're watching on YouTube, I'll put up the screenshot here for you. I mean, number one, Arlington County. It's care or don't care for me. And so here's what I care about. Arlington County, new listings increased 30% compared to a year ago. Meanwhile, showings decreased by 19%. And this is pretty common, and we'll see this similarity across the board. Fairfax County, new listings up 23%, showings down 15%. And then finally for Washington, D.C. proper, new listings, they were actually down by 1.9%, but then showings were down by 7.2%, Shawn. So, that to me, as I believe WTOP put it, is we're not quite at like the red alarm of the real estate market, but it's more of a flashing yellow. And at some point, we're getting more and more inventory and fewer buyer showings right now. What are you seeing in the market?
This is exactly what I saw. And in our weekly meeting this week, I went over numbers and I was like, listen, I'm just saying what I see. I watch these Arlington numbers every week. And I saw a slight uptick of new listings and I saw a slight downtick of showings. I felt like, people weren't showing as much. And so we talked about that in our meeting. And, there's certain agents that are saying, I'm super busy right now. And then there's others saying, hey, this is definitely affecting me. And, one in particular was, hey, I have a lot of buyers, but I feel like all those buyers have pulled back a little bit. They're tentative right now. And I think that is the key word for this market right now. It's tentative. And the reason is we've got a new president, right? We've got a guy that's been in office for six weeks now, and his agenda was to slash government spending. And, I was talking about it yesterday because, all of a sudden that starts affecting all of us. And I'm like I start freaking out. I'm like, are we going to have the spring market that we expect? This is the time when most real estate agents make their money and do most of their sales is during that spring market. And I'm like, are we going to have that this year? And, I started thinking about what Trump is doing right now. And I was like, all right, it's okay that you're doing what you're doing, but at the same time, don't do it like a bulldozer, right? I mean, there's ways to do it, but that's Trump's style, right? He just comes in and he bulldozes. And I was reading an article about like the way his style was back in the commercial real estate days when he was doing most of that in New York. He was kind of the same way and people knew about his style. But, that affects people big time, not only in, how they might be losing their jobs, but also it has a ripple effect throughout the entire United States as far as, how real estate's going to sell and how buyers are going to react. If they don't know that they're going to have a job next week, or if they don't know if the contractor that they work for that has big government contractors is going to contract, then there's going to be tentativeness. So they're going to pull back slightly. And until we have some sort of solid number to say, all right, hey, I'm not losing my job. All right, we're good. We should be okay. Then we'll start to see that positivity come back into the market. And I'm telling you, once that happens, we're going to get slammed. And everybody's going to jump at the same time. That's typically what happens.
What's your nervous level for the spring market?
It's so funny. Week to week, it changes, right? 2 weeks ago, I was confident. This week, I was a little less confident. But what I do is then I go look at my numbers from last year. And I'm like, all right, well, how many sales did I have last year at this time compared to this year? What were my numbers? And I'm actually up this year than I was last year. But, most of the sales, most of my closings are in April and May. So really, all of the listings and all the things are going to start coming on in the next couple of weeks. And then we're going to see how this comes out. And so, like, I've got 8 listings signed up that are coming on in the next month. So if these don't perform, then we're going to really know what's going on. So,
where do you see the biggest opportunity in the market right now?
Biggest opportunity, I would say buyers have the opportunity. There's not going to be the competition that we're seeing. So if you're used to competition in the buyer's market, you have an opportunity right now for the next couple of weeks. If you're not a contractor and you're not in fear of your job, you have an opportunity. You have an advantage. And so what we're seeing is we're seeing less showings. We might see competition. We might see some multiple contracts and situations, but you're not seeing like the 15 that we saw before. It might be 2, it might be 3, might be 0, And so you have an opportunity now. If you've been looking in that market inside the Beltway or slightly outside the Beltway, it might be your opportunity to get in without competition, with full contingencies in your contract. So if you wait a little bit, then everybody else is waiting too, and they're all going to jump at the same time, and then you're going to see competition again. So I think now's your time, right before that spring market or that surge of confidence hits, then it's too late.
What are you telling sellers right now? Because right now I have a listing in Calorama, and it'll be coming up on 14 days on the market. Ooh, 14
14
days.
days.
Oh, getting nervous. We've had about 23 showings. We're getting people that are, taking the train in from New York. Someone just showed it that their client flew in from Florida to see the property. So it's kind of at that price level and type of property. And it's been the most amount of interest with no offers. And we're kind of at the tail end of all this, dare I say, momentum we've built up with the splashy Urban Turf article, the Instagram video that gets tens of thousands of views. And now I'm wondering, all right, are we just going to hang out at this price? Are we going to kind of see what happens? Because most of the people that are touring this property are not affected, don't care, or are just going to buy this thing or another property regardless of, whatever the president does end up doing. And so I'm wondering at what price. And keep in mind, I guess this was all part of the plan because I told my client, hey, it's going to take 7 to 31 days. So it's always going to take this long at this price. So now that we're halfway through the time I said it would take to sell and we don't have any contracts, we have like 3 or 4 agents circling. But what would you tell a client in that situation?
I mean, I've seen the showings that you're getting on this. I've seen the feedback, and it's all really good. The thing is, you priced it right. People were like, oh, did he underprice it? Oh, but you looked at the history of this property and you priced it exactly right. And what that shows me is, again, the word tentative, like people are just slightly like, I don't know what's happening yet. I'm not ready to pull the trigger. We're still in the early months of spring. This is typical too. People are like, they're not quite ready, right? They're not quite ready. And then all of a sudden the hammer falls and people are going insane. So I think we're, number one, we're still in that section of the market, but we're also being affected by the Trump presidency and the Doge cuts. And so I really believe that this is the song of the next couple of weeks, that we have to get confidence back. Once that market feels confidence, that thing will be gone. And so if you're a buyer looking at these properties, now's your time. I don't think you need to drop the price because you're priced really well. I don't think that that's going to entice people. I think they need confidence.
It just takes time to sell a properperty like this. I'm not going to, I kind of asked you the question knowing the answer. Like, we're going to hang out. We're right where we want to be.
Right.
We'll revisit it in 35 days or 40 days, if something still hasn't happened. But everyone loves the property that goes in. Now, you had mentioned feedback, Shawn.
Yeah.
And that brings us to the next topic, which is agent feedback and specifically buyer feedback. Shout out to Jared James on Instagram. Jared James today put out a video about buyer feedback. Gets the people going, gets the people riled up. Dare I say engagement bait. But Jared James believes that eventually feedback will go away. Now, here's kind of the crux of the argument. When a buyer goes to show a property, they enter it into the showing time system. They see the property, and then the showing time system asks for feedback, and they have the opportunity to tell the listing agent what the buyer thought about the property, and sometimes, honestly, what the agent thought about the property, and that information is forwarded to the seller. If you don't submit the feedback, sometimes you get a call, sometimes you get a text message, the listing agent saying, hey, what'd your buyer think? Would love to get some feedback. What Jared James is saying is, listen, this does nothing for the buyer. It does not help out the buyer at all. As a buyer's agent, you have a fiduciary responsibility to represent your buyer. If you go out, submit feedback, and say, hey, this, I'm going to use an egregious example, but like, property was terrible, horrible smell, like you need to reconsider everything that you've done up to this point to list this property. And then your buyer changes their mind and says, oh, well, actually, we want to go after the property. Well, now you have to go back and, sheepishly take your cap in your hand and say, oh, by the way, we're interested in writing an offer. So that's if to say, if you're the buyer's agent and the buyer, there's no benefit for the buyer to submit the feedback to the seller. Sure, on the seller side, yeah, hey, send me some feedback. Oh, the lighting temperature is wrong. The lights are too bright. The lights are too dim. You don't like that the furniture is like this. Maybe we can switch it up. Oh, the paint color is wrong. There's a lot of advantages from the seller side. And some people say, oh, well, the price is always the feedback, or no offers are the feedback. That's kind of true, but kind of not the case as well, because it goes deeper than that. Shawn, what are your thoughts? Do you think buyer agent feedback will ever go away?
This is a tough one. I understand what he's saying. It could go away, but I think it's going to be there. I don't know that it's going to be the situation that we have now where we're filling out the forms. And to be clear, I rarely give advice on pricing because for that reason right there. If I'm going to say you're overpriced, you're priced well, or you're underpriced, like, why would I do that if my buyer might come back, right? If I give you my cards right away and I tell you what I think of the price, and then my buyer wants to buy it, well, I'm going to be like, well, you said it was priced right, so give me full price or more, right? So you have to be careful on that feedback that you give. And so when I get those forms back, I'll be like, it shows okay, it's cold, whatever, but I rarely do I give any advice on pricing.
Yeah, why would you ever give feedback on a property that your buyer's interested in?
You shouldn't.
Call the agent and talk to the agent. But if you say, oh, yeah, buyer's very interested. Oh, thought the property was underpriced. Like, can't wait to write an offer. I mean,
You
well, now as the seller's agent, you're like, well, I guess we're going to escalate this buyer group.
Yeah.
So I don't know if it's going to go away, but I don't think, like, after reading this, my opinion has kind of changed, because I always thought it was kind of innocuous to leave feedback, but there's really, if your buyer's interested, there's really no benefit. I mean, if you're a listing agent, yeah, I mean, people say it's a professional courtesy, but in what other industry are you getting feedback in the middle of a transaction? Sure, maybe like after the transaction, something would happen, but in my previous sales job, if I didn't get the sale over the phone, I don't call them back and say, "Oh, well, I'm just doing a sir, like, why didn't you choose to use me? Like, what could I have done differently?" Like, no. That's so, like, unprofessional to call someone back and be like, "Well, I just really hope that you would share, some feedback with me on why I didn't get it." No, that comes from a position of weakness, and I don't see the value in that at all. It's like bring your A game or don't bring it at all. So that's my opinion.
100%. Now, here's what I'll say is what is valuable. The one question, is your client interested or not? That's what I need to know. Are you interested or no? If you're not, okay, I can summarize what I think is wrong. Maybe the client just didn't like the property, or maybe I'm overpriced, or maybe I should have done the things that I thought I should have done to the listing before we hit the market. So I think we can all surmise what we need to do to the property to get it sold. But will you tell your client that you need to do those things prior to going on the market? And I think that's the biggest issue, right? There are agents out there, one, that will basically lie to the potential client at a listing appointment saying, "Oh, your house is worth this," right? I've seen it so many times. I'm the honest person that says, "Listen, your house is worth this. It's not worth that." And a lot of times I lose that listing agreement because they're going with the higher price, but in 2 weeks they're dropping the price. Or I'm the person that says, "Listen, I think you need to do A, B, C, and D to this property before you hit the market, so that we're not languishing on the market." And sometimes sellers take offense to that. But, I don't want a listing that needs work that sits on the market. I want a listing that looks amazing, is priced right, and sells. And that's my job, is to get it to that point. So, I don't know where I was going with this, but that's basically, where I feel about the feedback that we're getting. It's like, you should know already kind of what's going on. If you're getting a ton of showings and it's not moving yet, it's either the market is not right there or you're priced wrong, right? I don't think you're priced wrong, so I think it's the market right now, If
you're the listing agent, haven't you already gone over the feedback of the property?
Yeah,
like,
you
saw the property as the agent. You should give the feedback. Oh, we have yellow walls. I don't want to paint it. Okay, well, I advise that we drop the price, $5,000 before we list it. You should already know the feedback. If you're the buyer's agent and you're representing your buyer, where else in the transaction are you telling the seller your cards? Are you giving away this kind of confidential information? There's no benefit for the buyer in that transaction, and I don't think I'll ever leave feedback for a buyer that is interested in the property.
Yeah, I wouldn't. If your buyers, unless it's a competitive situation, that you're like, "Hey, we're writing," or give. But I'm calling at that point. Right?
Yeah, you're calling.
So I think that's the best way to get any feedback, is to call the agent, to be honest, and just be like, "Hey, did you guys like the property? Is there any interest?" "No." "Okay, cool. Thank you." I just needed to know that so that I can move on to the next one. And, I think that's the only feedback we really need. If we know that we're showing, like, I'll go into properties and I'm like at the listing, you're thinking, all right, I want this listing and what do I have to do? I don't know. But then once you stand in the property for a little while, you're like, all right, yeah, you know what? Maybe we should have done A, B, and C, so it's a hard line to follow. But I had this conversation yesterday. It was like, should we redo the bathrooms? Like, well, that's a time off the market. Right now is going to be the best time to sell. Do you want to pull off the market for a couple, stay off the market for a couple more weeks? Do you want to spend $15,000, $20,000, $30,000 and maybe not get that out? I think, there's something to be said for redoing bathrooms here and there, but there's also like, hey, let's just price it. It's knowing that somebody might want to redo this bathroom. I would say let's do the simpler things, paint and, staging. Those are the two simplest things to do to make a property look great. If you've got old furniture in there that's just scattered throughout, you aren't doing anything for your client, So make sure that it looks good so that you don't have to go back and get the feedback that, hey, it kind of sucks, man. Your property sucks, right? Let's make it good, right?
Most of the feedback should be pretty obvious. I'm thinking about, your condo that doesn't have the parking included. It's like, oh, okay, shocker. That was the feedback. Great. There's floor plan feedback where it's like, oh, my buyers, wished that there wasn't a, one bedroom on the top level as opposed to all the bedroom. Like they wanted all. It's like, well, I can't do anything with this feedback, and we probably could have known about this before touring, but it doesn't help out either party because it doesn't help out the buyer or it doesn't help out the seller because they're not about to change up the floor plan.
Yeah, well, listen, on a bedroom situation, typically people want bedrooms on the same level. So if you're saying you're a 4-bedroom and 2 of those are on the upper level and 2 are in the basement, that's a totally different price point than a 4-bedroom up top. And that's what, when you're looking at a listing, you can see where the bedrooms are. So if your client doesn't want a 2 and a 2, they want 4 on one level, then naturally. So when you're going to a listing appointment and you're a 4-bedroom, but it's like that, you can't price it the same. You have to make sure that you're pulling down the price because it's not 4 on one level.
All right, Shawn, let's move on to our next topic. This comes to us from cnet.com. We gave up a 2.75% mortgage rate to buy a new house, and we have no regrets.
Ooh, there's a different one, huh?
No regrets. Home price and interest rates are high, but purchasing a home was the right move, says home buyer Kim Porter. So the gist of this article is there's a young couple. Stop me if you've heard this before. They're living in a condo, and they're kind of tired of their small condo. They've, zeroed in on a neighborhood outside of Boston. A house came up, and, they had to have it. They're watching the price rises in their area. They're, figuring out their monthly payments. And, ultimately, she doesn't come right out and say it. And I feel a certain type of way, but I think that growing a family maybe in, I hope that's not a bridge too far, maybe in their future at some point. But apparently no regrets with giving up the 2.75 mortgage rate and trading it for a 6.49% mortgage rate. It looks like they did a temporary 2-1 buy down, meaning the payments are based on a lower rate for the first 2 years of the loan, and then it goes to the normal rate. But she said if I could redo the transaction, I'd buy the discount points for a permanent buy down instead of a temporary buy down. Right. But overall, Shawn, we're seeing more and more people give up the 2.75% mortgage rate. What are your thoughts on this article?
Life happens quickly, guys. You have to move when your life says to move. The longer you wait, the longer you're putting your life on hold, and the harder it becomes. And you watch, and I'll give you an Arlington instance, right? If you are in a condo and you're sitting on a 2.5 or whatever 2.75% interest rate, and you wanted to buy a single family home, guess what's happening right now? You are stuck. You're stuck there because you don't want to pay a 6% or whatever it is interest rate now, but you're watching the condo market kind of stay the same in pricing. It's not really going much up and down. It's staying pretty stagnant in pricing. The single family market is increasing like crazy. So all you're doing is making it harder and harder for yourself to purchase something because the prices have just gone up. So if you look at the pricing year over year, we're up 6% in a general area over, so think about that. Your property value, you just lost. Your interest rate would have gone up 4%, but the property value went up 6%. So where did you lose? You lost by waiting. And that's not every instance. If you're single family to single family, I can see the crunch but you're increasing value on one side and you're increasing on the other side. So it does make a difference when you're trying to make that payment. You're like, wow. But the key thing that she said was, I'm so glad I did it, right? And I think that's the key that you've got to think of is don't delay your life for this because life happens quickly. And number 2 is I personally wouldn't do a temporary buy down. I never really liked it, right? I thought, well, why would I spend all this money to do a temporary buy down for just 2 years? And then all of a sudden my interest rate, pops up or my payment pops up. Like, why wouldn't I take that money and then buy it down permanently? And you can do that. Yeah, it's going to cost a lot more, but at the same time, right now, I think the thing is people want affordability. So they'll do the cheaper option so that they can be like, oh, okay, I got 2 years to save. Are you really going to save the money? Probably not. Your payment's going to go up in 2 years and you're going to feel the pain whenever it comes in. So get used to paying that big amount, not paying the low amount. So if I were you, I would pay down the loan with a permanent buy down so that you have that for 30 years. Now, it all depends because we don't know what mortgage rates are going to do. We thought this year we were going to see into the 5s, into the 4s we were predicting. That ain't happening, right? So the longer you wait, you think it's going to happen. And now 5, 6, 7 years later, you're still buying houses at 7, 6%. You just delayed your life for 6 or 7 years because you're waiting for an interest drop. Don't do it, man. Just go buy and live and buy within your means, but it's time to give up the 2.75% mortgage rates and move on with your life.
I wasn't predicting 4% rates. I might have been at like 5.5.
I think our lender friend was. We were a little higher than him, but I think he had the data at the time, and now we're just, and that's the problem with trying to predict anything. Trying to predict the real estate markets or trying to predict interest rates, it's impossible. There are so many factors that we see right now. We're seeing it happen live right now with the presidency. And so you have to be careful. I would just say, hey, if you can afford it, move on to better pastures.
I was asking a buddy in my building whose partner is actually pregnant as well.
Mm-hmm.
And my wife and his partner's due date are like a week apart.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're on the same time frame. And this weekend, I'm going to be painting the nursery. And I asked if he's going to be sticking around painting the nursery. What's the deal? He's like, I don't think our landlord will let us paint. I'm like, what? Tell me more about this. He's like, well, they come and check every 6 months on the property.
Wow.
Like, what do you mean? They have someone that walks into the property, like property management, to check on their condo every 6 months. And he's like, yeah, we can't hang anything on the walls. And I'm like, what?
What?
And he goes, yeah, it's every nail hole's $50.
Oh my
God. If they put a hole in the wall, it's $50 every single time.
Yeah.
So, I was like, oh my gosh, I'd get out of that situation immediately. But they have a 2-bedroom. They're expecting a kid, and they're staying in the condo. And, I have a 2-bedroom. I'm expecting a kid staying in the condo. And I'm trying to figure out, the best time to buy. And I think the best time to buy, interest rates aren't going to matter. Now, I don't have a 2.75% mortgage rate, right? So I think that's the kicker. But I'm going to buy whenever the whenever the one kid or the 2 kids or however many kids are driving me crazy inside the walls.
Yeah.
But I think the one giving up the 2.75 mortgage rate is going to be a similar tale that we're going to see play out throughout 2025. And, we're battling the most amount of inventory that we're going to have since 2021. Shawn, I'm predicting it right now. We can look at the chart. If you're watching on YouTube, I'll throw up the weekly new listing charts, and you can see this little orange line that is on a skyward trajectory. So come, late April, early May, we're probably going to see the same amount of weekly new listings that we saw in 2021 compared to this year. And I don't know if the showings are going to be there. Mm-hmm. And so we may see this significant buying opportunity for people out there, and life does come fast. And so there could be opportunities that are just around the corner. And even in the article, the author says, hey, buy when the timing is right. We were watching this market. We didn't know when it would happen, but ultimately we were ready. We were prepared. We had a budget and we had a game plan, and we just ultimately went with it.
Yeah, go with your budget. So do your numbers. Know what you can buy with that. Be happy with what you can buy with that. If you're not happy with what you can buy with that, then wait, hold off. I guess that's not your answer. But if you have the budget and you're ready to go and you find something, buy it. You don't know what these markets are going to do. I invest all the time in different stocks, and I'm like, oh, this is going up. And 2 days later, it goes down. You can't predict this stuff. It's impossible.
How's your portfolio recently?
Oh, my God, it's got crushed, man. Just crushed. And I don't even look at it because I'm like, oh, my God. I just look at, mine's heavily NASDAQ, and I saw the NASDAQ down so much. I'm like, oh, my gosh, I don't even want to look. Right. But you have to make sure that you're making the right decisions. But you can't predict this stuff. So, you think it's going to go up with a new presidency. You think it's going to maybe be okay. Nope.
I heard an argument that said that the president is crashing the stock market to make it more affordable for regular investors to get in. What are your thoughts on that? That's what some Republicans are saying.
I just don't listen to anybody. That's the truth. It's like, everybody's going to have a soundbite. Everybody's going to have an opinion. And, you got to go on your gut and go on based on, why would he do that? Why would you try to crash a market so that other people can get into it. It doesn't make any sense. And you're just hurting everybody else around you. I don't think there is, that's the reason he's doing anything like this. He's trying to, from what he says, trying to get rid of government waste, which I think we all can agree that there is a lot of government waste. But at the same time, the markets are reacting to that. I don't think that his goal is, I want to, make the markets crash.
So you're really out here buying individual stocks. So you like to gamble.
Yeah, here and there, I definitely like to gamble. I mean, I have I have money set aside where somebody manages that. I don't touch that. I don't give him advice. I just say, hey, do your thing. But then I have a small account where I'm like, all right, I'm a gambler, right? My gambling isn't that great.
Yeah, what's the record? What's the stock market record for you for individual stocks?
What have I made? I mean, I don't know. I've made in a couple of days, I'll make 10 to 17 grand, but the next day it's straight down. So the problem is you hold on, you think, you try to become a day trader but the thing is you get emotional about it and you're like, it's going to go. And then boom, it drops. And then you're holding on to a bag that just keeps going like this, up and down and up and down. And that's the same thing with the real estate market. Don't fool yourself in thinking that, I'm going to time the market, because it's impossible. Time your life. Time your life out, get your expenses right, and buy. And that's it.
Well said.
Yeah. Cool.
Well
Thanks,
said.
man.
All right, well, that's just going to about do it for another episode of the Shawn and Matt Show. If you liked it, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, subscribe if you haven't already, and until next time, we'll see you then.
Take care.